My name's Sam Taylor and I'm here with Tim McCourt, and we're in the very beautiful home of Michael Schlingmann, who's kindly invited us over to talk to him about his life and career in animation. When did you get started in animation, Michael?
Technically I got started at college. There was no animation course at the college I went to in Münster in Germany, and so a friend of mine who now works at Disney and me decided to do a pop promo for controversial German song as our diploma. But there was no animation course. It was all self-taught, and we used not even an EOS, but just a U-matic editing system by just doing single frame edits from a camera right onto tape.
Okay.
And
when was that?
That was 1989.
Okay. Wow.
And then we showed the film to Hans Bacher, who at the time, well, he was in Germany at the time, but he just finished working on Roger Rabbit. And he liked it and said, I'll get you in contact with Richard Williams. He's looking for assistants. And so Andreas and me,
Andreas Deja?
No, Andreas Wetzelterhorn,
Okay.
who's known at Disney as the little Andreas.
Okay.
I guess because he's younger. And we went over and saw Dick and basically got the job on the day. He was recruiting for The Thief and The Cobbler.
Okay. So you showed him the video, the promo that you'd made?
Yeah. And a couple of portfolios and other things that we did at college.
And how did he respond? He personally looked at it, did
he? Yeah. We actually went into the little office at 138 Royal College Street and sat down in front of the cabinet that had all the Oscars, and I think there were about 200 awards in the cabinet, including the 3 Oscars.
Wow.
And then got basically sent upstairs, got introduced to a couple of people, then to Dick, and he just looked at the film, had a quick talk with us and said, when can you start? And we said in about 2 weeks. And so basically we went back to Germany, packed our things, and moved over here pretty much within 2 weeks.
And had you heard of Richard Williams before you went over there?
Yes, I mean, Andreas collected tons of animation stuff, and Hans Bacher once gave him a showreel, a Richard Williams showreel, which had, there's several showreels. There was one live action animation combined, there was one that was just classical animation, and I just loved it, because until that point I only knew TV animation and I knew Disney. And here was somebody who was doing pretty much any style you could think of. I mean, the old Shell campaign, The Tempest, was, well, it looks like oil paintings. I don't know if they were oil paintings, they were probably gouache paintings, but they're paintings in movement. And then he did that whole crayon thing for the Harlequin suites, which they looked like live drawings then colored in with crayons, and really well done. And so I just thought, well, if I can work for that guy, that'll be a good start.
And what was the connection with Hans Bacher? How did that come about?
Well, the interesting thing about Hans was that Andreas had been in contact with Hans, because Hans was a Disney fan, and had visited the Mad Tea Party, which was the company Hans had with Harald Siepermann, who died last year, and Uli Meyer. And so they knew each other, not professionally, but just on the side. So, I mean, Hans would give him copies of films that he'd gotten, bits of artwork. Andreas would spend the day, have a look at things, and because he was a proper Disneyist. And so he knew Hans quite well. And so he basically just rang Hans and says, would you mind looking at our stuff? And at the same time, Hans was teaching in Essen at the graphic design school.
Right.
And 2 of his pupils, Dietmar Kremer and Holger Leier, Dietmar's back in Germany now, Holger is at Pixar. They had just been recommended by Hans to go to London and to work for Dick. And so basically we just got together. So we actually got a house together in Kentish Town, and we lived for the first year or year and a half. We actually lived together in one house. It was a little German household.
Wow. It sounds like there's quite a few Germans working in the animation industry.
There are. They were back then as well, but I just think, one of the reasons was that in Germany at that time there was no real animation industry. So far so that at college I was always referred to as the guy who does the comics, and I kept pointing out that I'm not doing comics, I do animation, and even though that may sound sort of like pea counting, there's a huge difference. So it was just drawing little men, and no one cared for it, and you had a couple of reasonably cheap TV studios, but that was it. And then the moment I moved to England, small companies started coming out of the ground, like MS Films, and there was one in Hamburg, which I forgot the name of, but there was the Werner films. There were cinema movies, feature films made for the German audience. But then all of a sudden...
Oh, the Werner films.
Yeah. So basically, when I left Germany, there was no German animation industry. There really wasn't anything. So if you were interested in animation, you had to go to London or over to the States.
But it's amazing that there was so many people who came out of that and became so influential within Disney and those big organisations like Harold Sieberman and Andreas Deja and the other people that you mentioned.
Yeah.
It's really quite impressive.
So, when you was making this graduation film, was it like your intention to impress someone like Richard Williams, or was like what was your kind of goal when you was making it? It was a showreel piece to get a job?
Not really, no. I just wanted to do. I mean, I did illustration and graphic design. I actually worked in a graphic design studio while I was studying to sort of basically pay for my studies. Even though in Germany it's not very expensive, and I just had an enormous love for animation, and it was something I never thought I'd be able to do, because what I saw as far as the amount of output and the quality of output that you see at Disney, I just thought these people are very special people and they're sort of a class of their own, and I can't draw well enough to ever be part of them. And of course, when you so Andreas and I just decided if we do a diploma together, we might as well make a film.
Yeah.
And the choice of the music was his. It's a guy who's basically a German singer-songwriter who's quite boring and mainstream. But he did one song called Go Forth and Multiply, which is criticism on the overpopulation of the earth, a little bit of a stab against the church. Yeah. And it was not broadcast in Bavaria because they're very conservative there.
Oh, was it like an official music video?
It was no, it wasn't official. It's just we just did it and then sent it to him, and he invited us to a concert.
Really?
So, yeah.
Oh, wicked.
Did
he endorse the music video at all?
Not really, no. Okay. I mean, I don't think it had anything to do with it. But it went down well because somebody from WDR came and actually got our permission to screen it on the Friday night after our diploma exhibition on a 7:30 slot on the third German program, which was a cultural slot. So it went out nationwide 3 days after our diploma. So that
have you still got it?
I don't. Hold on, I must have it somewhere. It must be in the attic or something.
When was the last time you watched it?
Oh, I think 15, 20 years ago.
Yeah.
I'm sure I'd be horrendously embarrassed by now.
No.
It's funny looking back at stuff like that.
Yeah. I mean, Andreas still has a copy, so I might just have to contact him and see if I can get a copy.
It's interesting that you're talking about seeing all this stuff going on somewhere else and then thinking that that's done by very special people who you'll never be that good, because I think that I felt very similar to that when I was coming up. Like when I was in school, I just imagined that was in another place, and I don't know where I ever would have got the confidence to feel like I'd get to that level at some point. You feel like that's something that's innate, not something that's learned. And I kind of feel like that is I kind of feel like that's why certain crafts are very localized in certain places, like Britain, for example, has a lot of bands for a small country and stuff, and I think that being surrounded by other people who are doing the same thing, even if you know that they're just, a couple of 100 miles away or something, you kind of you can imagine that you could be like them, or that you can aspire to something like that. And that's why I think it's so amazing that you guys were in Germany and somehow you managed to penetrate that world which was completely outside of your own country.
It was mildly uncomfortable when I started because, of course, I had no idea what was expected of me.
Right.
But very, very quickly, I found that the image I had of your animator, your talented animator who could just draw a sketch in seconds, was actually not true, because all the people that I was surrounded by were hardworking people that were noodling and noodling until they got it right. And so the idea that you have to spontaneously be able to lay something down, I very quickly found out was not the case. Although not always the case. I have since met people who do that and who work like that, and I think I have started to work more like it. Like I managed to get scenes out if I draw very, very quickly. Within half an hour, I get the bones together, and they look very scruffy, and they're literally just gesture drawings. But back then, on The Thief, where everything was so meticulously crafted, it was all very different. It wasn't the wild artist who makes marks on paper. These were people who were whittling away.
I think that's a really important thing, to puncture that ideal of just talent being a thing that people have that's innate, and not being something that you have to chip away at long term, and feeling like you can eventually get to that if you work hard enough.
It's interesting that because I think most people or everyone who knows you would agree that you're like a very talented animator, but it's nice to see that like you've that you thought that, you know, of someone as well, and like and that you've actually crafted to get to that level, and you're saying now I'm able to work like that. And maybe it's because very early on you realised that illusion was shattered, you know, like I think that's what held me back for such a long time.
I think it would be really amazing to get people who are very good, successful animators and draftsmen to actually put up their first drawings and stuff when they first started doing animation.
I bet some of them would be depressingly good though.
Yeah, it's true.
I think I've got my first drawing somewhere here. First one, it was. If I find it, I'll show it to you later, but I don't know where it is.
Your house is an amazing museum to animation stuff. Like,
I know, man. I was going up the
incredible.
stairs to the toilet, and I was just like, "Oh my god!" There's like a layout from it's Totoro. Right?
Yeah. I've got a whole scene in my front room. I'll show you later. Because I met this girl called Junko Aoyama who was working for Uli.
Yeah.
And I kept talking to her how much I love Totoro and Miyazaki's films, and she, who was originally from Japan, said that friends of hers were working at Studio Ghibli. And so she visited Japan and apparently just walked in and said, I have a friend in London who likes Totoro. Have you got anything I could give him? And they pulled apparently the artwork pack off the shelf that they'd given to the publisher that made the book The Art of Totoro. And so I've got some of
oh my god!
And she just put it in a parcel and sent it to me.
What?
Together with a bunch of copies, VHS copies of the films without subtitles from Laserdisc. And so I had the first small collection of. I mean, I remember watching Porco Rosso for the first time and melting.
Yeah,
but I think just that walk up the stairs kind of encapsulates your like the breadth of your taste in animation. I mean, there's like an original Tom Gould drawing.
Yeah.
Oh yes, I love Tom
And
Gould.
there's a
Stromboli.
There's Stromboli.
And that is amazing because I remember that scene so well because it's when he bites the coin and it's like it looks like the key that the rest of the animation was drawn around.
Yeah,
you know, like,
there was a wild story behind that because it was Uli's birthday. I think it was his 43rd birthday or something.
Yeah.
And I turned up at his studio and he'd already done some pre-drinking, so he was nicely jolly.
Yeah.
And I gave him a bottle of champagne and a book I bought for him. I said like, "Happy birthday, Uli!" And he went, "Thank you. Here's a present for you." And he just gave me that drawing.
Wow. Oh my god!
And I asked him the next day. I rang him and I said, "Were you serious, or was it just because you're in such a jovial mood?" And he said, "No, I'm serious."
And where did you get it from?
I think he got it from. He got a lot of drawings from Milt Kahl.
Okay.
When he went over and sort of learned from him. He basically worked in the same room for a while to just be taught. And,
Really?
And Milt Kahl gave him tons of cells and drawings and signed them. And I think this may have been one of them.
Is that the Milt Kahl drawing?
No, it's Bill Titler.
Oh right.
But it's I think he got it from Milt Kahl.
Oh right.
Because he used to have a whole wall full of Milt Kahl cells and drawings all signed.
Jesus
stuff.
Christ.
That's absolutely incredible.
Mm-hmm.
So I think probably most people know your work. Will know your work online under the pseudonym of Felix Sputnik.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes.
Where does that come from?
I don't know. It's I always like I had a friend whose name was Klaus, and he always introduced himself as Felix to everybody.
Yeah.
And I always regretted not doing that myself. My father was called Felix, and Felix Schlingmann, and I love the word Felix because it means the lucky one, doesn't it? And so when I came over here, I just thought, damn, I should have just introduced myself as Felix to everybody, so that would now be my proper nickname. And I didn't, so I decided to do it online. And the word Sputnik, I don't know. I was always fascinated with the early space exploration. Yeah. I think it means. Does it mean comrade? I might be wrong here, so don't quote me on this. But it's
Don't worry, it's not going on the podcast or anything.
But it sounds quite nice.
Yeah, it does. It's a good name. Has that ever led to any confusion? Has anybody ever been like, "Oh, we're waiting for Felix Sputnik. Who the hell are you, Michael Schlingmann?"
No, not really. I mean, it quite often happens that people on my website. There's a little thing at the bottom that says Felix Sputnik or Michael Schlingmann as his passport claims.
Right.
And a lot of people send me emails and actually say hello, Michael. So they figure out quite quickly. And if they don't, I'll just answer back as Felix.
So you work as a freelance animator?
Mostly, yes. I mean, at the moment, all the time.
Yeah. But you have some experience in the past working on feature films, quite a few feature films actually. I've got ParaNorman,
Yes.
story artist.
Yeah.
The Pirates.
Yes.
Tale of Despero, Corpse Bride, Valiant, Road to El Dorado, Quest for Camelot, Space Jam, and The Thief and The Cobbler.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Start at the beginning.
Yeah, I think that's definitely Thief and the Cobbler is probably the one that I want to ask you about the most. What exactly did you start as an assistant on that?
Yeah, so I mean, the first thing I did is I assisted Brent O'Dell, who later worked at Passion. And I did, I think, elephants being hoisted up on chains to platforms in the war machine. And that didn't last very long. I think Dick quickly found out that I had a reasonably good technical mind, and I was then given all the very boring but very technical scenes. Like there's a scene where you go through the city and up the minarets, and the minaret changes in perspective, and you have a look at the golden balls. There's a scene where you pan from the city across a bit of desert and then up the vulture tower, which is a big tower with a vulture on top. Then inside the beak, up a staircase, and then into Zigzag's room. And all of that was a combination of just a 3D flight animated in proper perspective, and things like moving pieces of artwork and background that then suddenly revealed the fact, like you had a bit of animated staircase that came up to the corner of a wall. The wall wouldn't be animated, the wall would be a piece of artwork that you zoomed in and panned at the same time, behind which the real background would appear.
Wow.
And because you came from a very dark to quite a light environment, the moment the first light from the torch came past the wall, everything else was sort of cast into silhouettes, so the takeover was invisible, so you couldn't actually see. And so most of these scenes I got to do. So there's a flight into the countryside where you go past paddy fields and through mountains and stuff.
And you animated?
Yeah, it's all animated single frame.
How long after you was assisting did you make that kind of jump?
That was very quick. I think within 3 months we got promoted to junior animators. And the other interesting thing is that because we were all like all the animators on the main project got given a lead animator credit when the film was taken away from Dick and finished by the Completion Bond Company as 2 different versions. And then I think all the other people that subsequently worked for the Bear Company, for Dale Bear and stuff, and worked on it, just only got animator credits. So despite not being a lead animator on that film, on IMDb I have a credit as lead animator.
Oh, really?
So I was only an animator, but I was an animator earlier on than some other people.
What would be the difference on that project as lead and just animator?
I don't really know. I mean, there were a couple of people like Neil Boyle and stuff who worked on Roger Rabbit, who basically would look over other people's work and say, this is not how I would do it, and they were most certainly lead animators.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I was later lead on Valiant and Tale of Despero, and there really is administrative work as well as animating, so you're in charge of a group.
Okay.
And you have to basically, and they're all fantastic animators. They're young, they're mostly French, and they animate you against the wall. But they want to shine with every scene, and you can't do that. The sequence needs to all together, and it can't just have highlights. And so that's the funny thing where you become a lead animator when you're no longer quite as good as the animators that work for you, but you're capable of doing one thing. You're capable of sort of reining them back.
Right.
But I definitely wasn't a lead on The Thief.
How long did you work on The Thief and Cobbler before it got taken over by the Bell Box?
I think it's around a year and a half. It might be a little bit longer because I quit before it got taken away from him. Okay. And I quit partially, and I have no idea where I had the balls from, because it's nothing I would have done later. It's Dick at some point started to get pissed off with me. He at some point said he needs to ritually burn my kite, because I used to go kite flying at lunchtime. Never during work time.
He wanted to burn your kite.
Yeah, he said sacrificial burning of Michael's kite was in order, but that was of course just a joke. But there was more to it than that. It was the whole thing that anybody who was seen to have fun, that just wasn't on. You weren't working hard enough if you had fun, and I was still having fun, and so he would start to poo-poo my work, and I did a lot of things. That there's a whole sequence where you go down a staircase, which Dean Roberts animated, and no one in the studio could figure out how to have a cycle of enlargements on a photocopier based on a single spiral that would loop without a kick in the speed. And everybody had tried it, and because I studied maths and physics at high school, I just said, give it to me. And so I would work these things out. I'd calibrate scenes if Roy Nesbitt was too busy. And none of this was allowed to get through to Dick, because I was warned that if he knows that I did it, he wouldn't approve the scene. So I did it all without taking the credit for it. And in the end, I just thought, this is so ridiculous, where people were crawling past his seat to ask me things, and I I was really cocky. I just basically said to Ian Cook, the production coordinator, that I think the studio can work just as well without me, and I quit. And luckily, Dick was very nice to me, because what usually happened is that if you quit, you had to be out by 4 o'clock that afternoon with a box in your hand, and the key code was changed. When I left, I was allowed to do my remaining 2 weeks, and Dick was unbelievably friendly to me. He would ask me questions. He would, like, all of a sudden, all of that was gone. I guess he just couldn't ask if I wanted to stay, but he was very nice. So I, no hard feelings there. Yeah. And then I knocked on Uli's door one day and said, I've done it, I've quit. And he went, I can't believe it. What are you doing next weekend? And I said, nothing. He said, you want to fly to New York? And so then I started doing commercials, basically.
So Uli Meyer's studio was based in New York at that time?
No. They were both based in Soho, in a road that no longer exists, Oxford Circus Avenue, which was a tiny road that's now in the middle of a shopping centre. But we had lots of jobs for such and such in New York. And Uli was tired of going because he'd gone so many times. And he needed somebody who, could represent the company and go for him. And I'd never been to New York, and so
wicked.
That's brilliant. I loved it.
So the experience of working at Richard Williams' place was, I didn't see the documentary that was made recently, but you spoke at the screening in the Barbican in London. I heard the experience of it was like just very intense for a lot of people. A lot of late hours. People were doing a hell of a lot of work for the love of it, for no money, and then obviously the fact that it was never completed led to some hard feelings on those people's parts. Or...
Yeah, I mean, it was very hard. I mean, I don't think I'd be able to do it now. I mean, I was 25, and there were compulsory 60 hours a week, and that basically meant, and some weird things happened. Like I had a friend over one week. And because I wanted to spend some time with him, and we would then go on holiday back to Germany, and he'd give me a lift, and we want to leave on that weekend. So I did the extra 4 hours every night during the week. And then I also worked a full weekend of 20 hours. So I basically did an 80-hour week, and then spent some time in the evenings the next week. And when Friday came, and I didn't fill in my weekend overtime sheet, I was asked into the production office, and I was asked what was going on. And I said, well, I'm actually going away Saturday morning, so I can't do the overtime, but don't worry, I've done it all in advance. And I was told that you can't do overtime in advance, and they didn't like my attitude. And I was forced to cancel the trip. I mean, my friend was in his car, so we went on Monday instead, because that's when holiday started, and work the weekend. And so there were some mad things that went on, and it was quite tiring. But as a 25-year-old, you can do it all. And I don't think it's very productive, though, because there were weeks where I was so tired on the weekends that you just sit there and you push your way through, and then you're not looking forward to Monday either, because you push your way through it again. I don't think you're any faster. You are if you do it for a month. Like if something needs to be finished and for 4 weeks you have to do weekends, that's fine. But if you have to do it on a regular basis for, in this case, 3/4 of a year, I don't think... You do a 40-hour week in 60 hours. That's what happens.
Yeah, it's funny because like we were talking to Aya, who's a Japanese animator, and she was saying that in Japan they work incredibly late, but then they get in really late as well. Like, and I'd always seen in the making of like DVDs in Japan, like people work until like 6 o'clock in the morning, or 4 o'clock in the morning. I was thinking, fucking hell, and then what do they go home and then they get back in? But then they don't come in till after lunchtime. It's just like, well, why don't you just do those hours in the morning? And then it's sort of at some point it sort of becomes redundant, all the extra time you're doing.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. I think it's
And why was everybody doing all that time? Was it because there wasn't other jobs available, or they really believed in the project, or Richard Williams was such a iconic figure that everybody wanted to please? Or
it's a combination. I mean, for starters, Dick didn't actually. That's the tea. If you.
I was going to get the coffee.
Oh, fantastic! Yeah, I hope there's enough in there.
That's all right.
Dick didn't hire any very experienced animators. There were a couple. There was Dave Byers-Brown, who was quite experienced, and some of the people that were left over from Roger Rabbit. Okay. But a lot of the people he got in were youngsters that were either straight out of college and showed promise. because he basically thought that Bluth and to a degree the later Disney system had poisoned animation, and I sort of agree with him. Whereby, I mean, you look at some of the Bluth animation; it's basically all Disney takes, but then exaggerated. So it's cartooning the cartoony.
Okay.
And he didn't like that. He wanted people to not even have a particular style in mind, because this was a film that stuck to his style. So he liked young people, and he basically told them all, this is going to be the most significant animated film that'll ever come out, or at least that'll come out, for the foreseeable future. And we did all believe in it. I mean, I remember seeing the battle scene for the first time on just a small moviola, so a screen that was roughly the size of a postcard and a half. And I didn't even know what the film looked like. I mean, I'd seen his commercials, I expected something quite sophisticated and possibly quite realistic. What I didn't expect was something that was very illustrative, very flat, and very quirky. And then this battle scene happened where, like, all the perspectives were wrong, but amazing. The amount of double and triple and quadruple exposure gave the whole thing sort of a luminous feel. I honestly had never seen anything like it in my life. And
I've only seen the re-cobbled cuts,
Yes.
which is online. How true is that to the intention of the original film?
It's pretty good. Bits have been added, and there is, of course, now a chance that the original cut that Dick still had is going to come out on DVD or Blu-ray. Because after the screening in LA, I think the American Academy is interested in helping to make that possible. So there might be a chance that very soon you'll see a version that's just Dick's drawings as storyboards and animatics and whatever was done on the film, but none of the stuff that got done later, which there are portions of which are still in the recobbled cut.
But it wasn't it like a very small percentage of the film was actually ever completed though?
Yeah, there's a fantastic thing in the documentary where Philip Pepper said that he said, we noticed that we had done 95 minutes of a 90-minute film and we hadn't started the story yet. And that sort of sums it up, which basically means that there's a vast amount of footage. I think if you take the rough line tests of The Witch and all the stuff that Art Babbitt had done together, I think it's getting towards 2 hours of material, of which I think in the recobbled cut, I guess under an hour is actually in there. And if you finish that film properly, i.e. did all the storytelling bits so that they actually worked, other bits would have had to be trimmed as well. So I guess that's about half the film really isn't done. But as far as time's concerned, I mean, there's more footage than there is running length. So
that's ridiculous.
So he, as far as I understand it, that you guys were animating and the whole film wasn't even completely storyboarded.
Yeah, that's correct. And I think the Completion Bond Company, they're the guys that basically take over if you can't finish the film. Yeah. They demanded that Warner Brothers got a storyboard of the whole film, so they actually saw how long it was and what was happening. And so for the last, I think about 3 or 4 months of us animating on the film, Dick would not animate, but just sit and with magic markers and pencils, in color, very, very nicely, storyboard the remainder of the film. That was, and I think when the thing finally collapsed, that was just after he delivered his cut, including his storyboards and whatever footage there was. I wasn't there at the time, so I think I left about 2 months earlier, maybe 3 months earlier. But
did you get a sense of that happening when you was there?
No, we all thought that Dick would finally pull it off and get a storyboard that was interesting enough, and get the guys to agree to keep going. But I think the problem was that we were coming to the end of when the film was supposed to be delivered anyway, and it certainly wasn't done. And Hans Bacher at the time was working for Amblin, and he rang me that morning when the studio closed down and said, I have heard rumours they're going to take the film away from Dick today. At which point I rang one of the guys at the studio and told him what I'd heard. And he said, I don't think so. And then he rang me back half an hour later and said, they've just announced a meeting after lunch. If they close down the studio, can you pick us up in the evening? Because of course they had tons of artwork and just their own drawings and books and stuff. And they just thought if they lock up the studio, they have to leave all of that behind. So I did a mercy run that night, and because of course they did close down the studio.
Wow.
And Holger, the other friend of mine, wasn't even there. He was on holiday, and he came home to find a letter on his doorstep that says that your
desk has been destroyed.
No, because basically your contract with Richard Williams Productions has been terminated, and you thought, what have I done? I was totally unaware that the studio had closed down.
And so what is the general consensus among the people that you know who worked on that? Was it that Richard Williams was irresponsible with that film, or that it was very unfair that it was taken away from him?
No, it's half of each. Yeah. The problem with Dick is that Dick is a total perfectionist, and he would have probably produced an amazing film had somebody given him another 20 years. But that's not how you make films in Hollywood. So that there's no chance in hell that, given the 2 years that he was given, he would have finished that film. And it's not because it's impossible to do. It's just because he wouldn't let anything go. And so I just think that there's an incompatibility between the way modern films are made and the way he worked. He'd worked on it for 25 years, and he wanted another 20 years, really. And this was a chance, but his modus operandi just wasn't that way. And I wonder, I mean, I would have loved to have seen, I mean, it would come out now, roughly, 5 years ago, but I would have loved to have seen what it could have been like.
But just imagine if it came out now, like, how weird it would have looked, because bits of it would have been shot in, like, 1975.
Yeah.
Bits of it would have been
Animation
shot
started in 64. That's when he started the whole thing, 1964,
Christ.
the year I was born.
But he shot some of the, but he did, shot some of the cells and stuff like quite early on, didn't he? Right?
Yeah, I mean, when I arrived there in 1990, about half an hour of the film was already on film, and so I think that
this was coloured and.
Yeah, I think this all happened even before Roger Rabbit. So this would have happened in the early 80s, where a lot of the War Machine stuff was done, and because it all started with the Nasruddin stories, the Mullah Nasruddin.
Yeah.
And there's hardly anything left of them.
1001 Nights.
No, Nasruddin is I've got the books here. It's basically a sort of Sufi teaching tool. It's the fool teacher. Nasruddin is basically a mullah who does ridiculous things, but in the process of reviewing the ridiculous things, you find out that there's a better way of doing it.
Okay.
So it's that the typical thing where, what are you doing? Oh, I've lost my earring. It says, have you lost it around here? No, I lost it in the house. Why are you looking out here? It's too dark in the house. That's the sort of logic.
Yeah.
And Idris Shah and Ali Omar Shah, his brother, had the rights to these stories.
Oh,
and Idris Shah actually wrote them all.
Yeah.
And then they fell out with each other and took all the material away, including the ability to use any of the animation, with one exception. The thief character, who Dick had just invented and put into the illustrations, was a character that they weren't interested in because he wasn't part of the stories. So he was allowed to keep the character. So the styling of that particular drawing and that particular character then became The Thief and the Cobbler. And it has little bits and pieces. It has the sort of the fool that can teach you something type thing is still in there somewhere. It's like, yeah.
It seems to me that it was quite influential on a bunch of things were made afterwards. Aladdin particularly.
Yeah.
I mean, it obviously did have quite a big influence on that, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's a fantastic sequence at the end of Persistence of Vision where they just literally run a scene from The Thief and then the scene from Aladdin. And the other thing is, of course, that a lot of the people that worked on Aladdin, like Eric Goldberg and Andreas Deyer and oodles of other people, worked in London on Roger Rabbit because Disney sent them over. And so Dick is an enthusiastic person, and he would have immersed them in that stuff and most certainly tried to recruit them, for working on it in the future. So I think that, but I don't think that it's necessarily a rip-off. I think it's just you're just influenced. Like nobody lives in a vacuum.
Yeah.
And I think the biggest influence it had on Secret of Kells, which in spirit is almost the child of The Thief and the Cobbler, because it's based on an existing style, the Book of Kells, whereas Dick's was based on Persian miniatures, was sticking to all the weirdnesses that style held, i.e. no proper perspective, flat colours and textures and patterns, and did it successfully. And
I thought it was a pretty coherent story.
Yeah.
It was a really good film. Actually.
Yeah, I liked it very much. But I definitely felt it was influenced. And even the fact that those two guys, I think, worked on it for 12 years before they got it commissioned, so It's only half the time that Dick worked on it, but it's sort of similar.
You did it. So after that experience of working on it, you went into commercials.
Yeah.
And then, how long did you work in commercials before you got back into features again?
Ooh, I think it was only 3 or 4 years, because I worked for Uli. Then I left and worked for Passion after Andy Knight left, and they needed somebody to do sort of 2D directing. Did a couple of one campaign for Clark's shoes.
Oh yeah.
And then suddenly got coaxed back by Uli, because Uli got the deal to do 20-something minutes for Space Jam.
Oh right.
And was recruiting, and he basically got a team of 112 people together in 2 studios in Soho, and we did, I don't know, it's somewhere close to half an hour of the film.
Wow.
With Uli running an amazing ship. I mean, I've never seen him that enthusiastic, because he knew where every scene was at any time.
Right.
And there were loads of animators, and loads of people that used to work for Passion just came over, like Ken Morrissey and stuff. And that was great fun. I mean, the project, it was just a long commercial basically, but the one thing that was nice is that they hadn't sorted out the script by the time that we all started.
Right.
And so they allowed us to animate whatever we wanted, to just explore the characters.
Right.
So we were doing test cycles of skipping Bugs Bunnies, invent gags, have dribbling scenes, and that was fantastic. I just loved it. So you were allowed to do whatever we wanted for about 5 months.
Really?
And then finally the whole thing kickstarted properly, and then we had 6 or 7 months to finish the extra footage.
To get half an hour done.
Yeah. And it all worked, and it was lovely.
What half an hour? Was it like a chunk of the film?
There were several sequences.
Okay.
Like the tryout gym was all ours. The first arrival in Toontown was all ours. A portion of the game was ours.
Right,
little bits of Moron Mountain, and it's. I can't even remember the sequences. It's amazing. I thought I'd forgotten it all.
Yeah.
So we would get like 7 or 8 different sequences, each 5 or 6 minutes long. So
I remember seeing that film in the cinema, because I was massively into Michael Jordan in the 90s, and I loved Warner Brothers cartoons, and when there was a Jordan Warner Brothers film coming out, I just loved it. And I mean, I don't know how it's kind of regarded by the animation community or whatever, but I still really like it. I watched it the other day and I was like, I thought it was really good.
It was like the perfect time as well. Like everybody loved Warner Brothers. Everybody was like,
everyone loved Jordan.
Just like met in the middle. I assume it was quite successful.
Yeah, I think it was very successful.
It's surprising they didn't do like the sequel or whatever, because.
Well, there's a you know these things where you have a petition to the government.
Right.
There's a petition to the British government for Mr. Cameron to ask Warner Brothers to do Space Jam 2.
Really?
I think it's slightly tongue in cheek. I signed it
with LeBron James.
It's just because it was so good for the London animation industry.
Yeah,
they want to do it again.
So, yeah.
Check it out. Check out petition Space Jam 2. I'm sure it's still open.
Oh really?
And
it seems a little bit of a roundabout way to ask David Cameron to ask that guy. You know?
So had you animated Warner Brothers characters at that time before?
I don't think so. No, I animated a couple of commercials with them afterwards, but this was the first time just doing Warner Brothers characters.
Yeah, I bet afterwards everyone probably wanted Warner Brothers characters in their commercials and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, Uli did a couple. He did one with for Walker's Crisps with I forgot the name of the footballer, Gary Lineker.
Oh, Lineker.
And Bugs Bunny and Lola Bunny, and then we did one for a Spanish company using the Coyote and the Roadrunner. Yeah, it's fun. I mean, commercials are commercials. I prefer commercials these days that are a bit quirky and weirder, so you can just try out new things. But,
So you did that Guinness ad with the hands. Did you direct that?
Yeah.
How did that come about?
Well, that was weird because when I was at Warner Brothers working on the Unspeakable Quest for Camelot.
Sorry, just to explain quickly that it's an advert where you've got it's a rostrum camera looking down at a table and you're moving your hand underneath it in stop motion, and it's all in black and white, and you're just doing some like fun animation stuff with it that's quite surprising and well animated, I suppose.
Yeah. Well, I when I was at Warner Brothers on the Quest for Camelot, I got so bored every once in a while, and we had the first computer line tester. What's it called? I think it was the Animal line test system. And you could leave your animation running and it would just basically run full screen while nobody else was using the machine. So I decided that instead of just leaving an animation there, I would shut down my scene and then do a fun thing with my fingers, including, like, for example, the Newton's Cradle, where you have a single finger sticking up, one hand hits the other hand, you replace each finger, so it looks like the finger actually travels across the top of your wrist. And I just thought I'd come up with 2 or 3 and that's it. And so every day after I did my line test, I would do one of those little things and then go around to every line test station and just call up the scene and have it running there as a cycle. So whoever came next would then see it and then have to close it down and start a new one. And it didn't stop with 3. I think I got to somewhere like 30 different tricks. And then I converted them when I left to QuickTime movies. And one day I was taking them off a CD at Richard Purdom Studios when we were working on Mr. Bean. And they had a bunch of agency people over that looked over my shoulder and saw the things and liked it. And that was that basically. They just liked it and asked could they have a copy. I gave them a copy. They went away, and then about 4 or 5 years later, they found me at Uli's studio and said...
How long later?
4 or 5 years. I mean, maybe it was 3 or 4 years, but many years later.
That's a long time in advertising.
Yes, I was no longer working for the Purdoms. The studio no longer existed. And they just found me there and basically said, we've got a Guinness ad, do you want to do it? And so I said, sure. And I actually meant most of the tricks that you see in the ad are new again from the 25 I originally did it at Warner Brothers.
Really?
And I think there's still more things that you can do with your fingers. They wanted a 2-minute version, which I did. Then there's a 60-second cut down, and then there was a St. Patrick's Day one as well, where my fingers do river dance, which is also online if you.
Yeah. And did they all go out on telly?
Yes, they went out on telly, and they also played, in Charing Cross on the escalator. All the monitors, they all played all the way down there. I actually have some footage somewhere of me going down on the escalator, just filming like 200 hands.
Yeah, it's great because you're pretty inventive, like with animation as well. Like you've done like a few. I mean, just like kind of like little like muck aroundy kind of things, and and it's cool because they do pretty well online as well. Like,
yes, that's true. Yeah.
Like Obama's Elf.
Obama's Elf blew my mind. I saw it last night for the first time. I was wetting myself.
Yeah,
but it's got 3 million views on YouTube.
I know.
Something crazy.
It took 3 hours to make.
Well, I mean, how long did the hand thing, the Guinness thing, take to make?
Not very much. I think it's 2 weeks for the entire production schedule. So I would just try things out and then cut them together, and then in some cases film them again. I mean, the biggest problem was I needed little bridges. So you have a trick that you do, and you decide to put that trick on either side, or a particular trick on one side of a particular other trick. You then have to afterwards film the bridge that connects the two.
Oh, yeah.
So that took a while, where I would just mark on the screen where they had to be and then just film the stuff. And we just had the same lighting each time. There was a green piece of cardboard underneath to cut, basically to just color key the hand out if we needed to. And that was it. And
that must have been a pretty lucrative job for you. I assume you got a director's fee and stuff.
It was. I got a buyout. It's the first time I've ever been paid on top of a job for something that I hadn't done. In this case, the right to use it. And so yeah, that was a nice one. I mean, not vast amounts, but much better than just being paid your weekly fees. So,
I'd love to see you do more and more of that stuff, because I think you are like, there's the other one where you're sort of you've got a camera set up and you're sort of almost acting like you're pushing the floor down with your foot either side, and you kind of get this.
It's like a boat.
Exactly.
Earthquaker. That was quite popular. A friend of mine showed that to a photographer in Canada who went to a wedding, and she showed it to people online and asked them if they were interested to do it. And so they have a whole wedding party do that thing.
Oh, really?
And she made it part of their wedding video.
Oh, wow.
So,
that's great. I think that's a matter of time before someone sees that and sticks it in an advert as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, sometimes I even do things that I don't go any further with. I mean, there's that looping thing for E4. I don't know if you've seen it, where I'm just holding a sign in front of my face with the E4 logo.
That's so cool.
Yeah, and I've actually flash animated other versions of that, which all have to do with either rotation or flipping top and bottom. So somebody, for example, jumping until they're in a crouched position, then you flip the entire thing over so that the entire jump becomes a sine curve.
Right.
Or bouncing against a wall and then flipping the wall and the person so that it looks like you're going through. And I was going to do a lot of these, and because E4 was asking for entries into a competition.
Right.
And so I animated a couple on Flash just as samples of what could be done, and I did this one in the garden with a mattress, and then I never sent it away. I don't know why I didn't send it away. It's the deadline passed, and I was happy with it. I put it out online. I never did anything with it.
Yeah, I think there's definitely like a massive demand for like just clever things you can do.
Clever short form ideas.
Yeah.
That's sticky online. I think that it's. It seems to me that like for somebody who started in animation in the 80s or the early 90s, you seem to have like a pretty good grasp of like what's current and like what people are going to love right now on the internet. And I think there's very few people from that time who worked on Richard Williams and stuff who have that kind of understanding. And it also seems to me like you have you're an earlier adopter when it comes to technology.
Yes. Yeah.
Like you do 3D animation. You were on Desperado and Valiant. You were a 3D lead.
Maya, and I'm now working on XSI, and I love TV Paint and Flash and. Yeah, I mean, there's some things I've always liked drawing on paper. I think TV Paint and a Cintiq beats paper for me, and that's not because I don't think that paper has a fantastic texture and there's a certain way of working. It's just the fact that I can do an entire film by myself in TV Paint, and I can't on paper. I don't have the facilities. I don't have a rostrum camera. I don't have cells. I don't have vast amounts of paint. It costs an enormous amount of money. I can do it all. I mean, I just did a job for Channel 4. There's a show called The Midnight Beast, and they contacted me at the end of November, and they needed a 53-second animated title sequence, Disney style, by Christmas, and 2 additional scenes by the beginning of January. And I delivered the whole shebang in 4 weeks with one person to help me. And and it's not as good as a Disney opening sequence, and of course I couldn't afford for the money they had to hire a background artist. And I can't paint backgrounds, so I did it sort of 101 Dalmatian style, where I just did drawings and then I colored them in. But what came out of it is a presentable piece of animation. It's almost a minute. Oh, you've seen it? Oh, good.
It's with the pigeon.
Yeah. But it is 4 weeks work of one person, and I couldn't have done it any other way. So it's, there's only one way of doing it.
Yeah, I'm pretty lazy as well. I think that's the reason why I'm really interested in digital 2D animation more than working on pencils and paper. I mean, I think perhaps for some people still there is some value in working on paper. You can get more fine details, and it's a different process. You can be slightly more expressionistic if you're using other materials like inks or chalk or whatever. But I think that if you're doing cartoon animation, for me there's very, very few reasons to do it on paper still.
But I think even if you are like going to use inks or like chalk or whatever, you could still do the animation digitally and then print it off. The animation itself, I still think it's just I agree, it's more efficient to be done like that, unless you want to animate straight ahead in charcoals or something like that. But, I don't know.
Yeah, it's definitely more efficient. I mean, I had a little meeting, I think, at the Lupus.
Oh yeah.
Because they might do another feature film or another long format film, and they were asking me, could I run them through TV Paint versus doing stuff on paper like they did on the Snowman. And I have no idea which way they're going to go, but I wouldn't be surprised. There's a nice guy called Pete Dodd who did a test animation.
Yeah. I saw it actually. It's fantastic.
It looks so lovely, and it looks like it's scanned. It just, it looks like it's drawn on paper and scanned. And the other thing is that I do have friends that don't like going over to digital, and the reason is that it's not the same as drawing. And I always think that if you grow up as a child and you use thick crayons on the back of rolled up old wallpaper, and then somebody gives you a really nice pencil and a really nice piece of sort of slightly grainy paper, and you do your first mark and you say, that's not the same as a crayon on the back of a wallpaper. You never get anywhere. So of course drawing on a Cintiq has nothing to do with drawing on paper. I mean, for starters, I use the resistance of the paper, the coarseness, as my guide as to how much power to put in to do a circle, for example, or to do any shape. I can't do that on a Cintiq because it's a piece of glass. So I wear a glove and I use the friction between my glove and the screen, and I use my I move my entire hand instead of moving just my fingers. So I do draw differently. The process of drawing on a Cintiq is totally different from how I draw on paper.
Right.
But it's neither better nor worse. It's just different. And once you get better at it, hey presto.
Mm. And so, when did you start working digitally?
I mean, I think my first digital film was Valiant.
Okay.
Where it was just CGI, and I mean, I said to the producer, I've never worked on Maya before, but I said, give me a try. If I can't hack it in 2 weeks, you can fire me. And he said, no worries, we will. and then I found out it wasn't very difficult because it's because you don't need to know very much about the program in order to be able to animate to start with.
Yeah, and were you just animating straight keys, or were you using the graph editor?
I was using the graph editor pretty quickly.
Okay.
I mean, for starters, the first scene I did was very messy, and then I just there's a guy called Alan Sperling, who worked for Pixar before, who just said, "How would you do this if you drew it?" And I said, "Well, this is a walk cycle." I said, "I'd do my passing positions and my touchdown positions, and then I'd work my way through the rest." And he said, "Why don't you just do that here?" And so the first walk cycle I did was a very stiff one where I only had passing positions and contact positions. But by then pushing some of the elements to make overlaps, you very, very quickly have a very organized scene that only has clusters of keys, so that you can actually fix it. The biggest problem is, of course, that if you key everywhere, you have no chance of fixing anything. And so you just learn to be slightly more organized. I mean, stuff you've already learned when you drew, because you don't start with every drawing, you start with every fourth or eighth drawing. And then, so you have to organize your animation that way, and it's the same with CG.
And so when you made the move into CG, was that because there wasn't work in 2D animation, or was it just something you wanted to try?
I didn't really want to try it, but this was a chance to work on another feature film, and I actually quite liked. I mean, a friend of mine, Neil Ross, had done some artwork for it, and it looked like a fun project. I mean, it looked like fun because the Germans actually did use falcons in the Second World War to intercept carrier pigeons that were carrying messages, which I think is a ludicrous concept, and it was so funny in itself that I just thought, I mean, I wouldn't mind. And it's a pretty cheap film. I still quite like the humour in it. It's very Goon Show style humour, but I mean, it's nothing spectacular. But it was fun because working out in Ealing was fun. Okay. Even though it meant motorbiking over there every day. But the studio is lovely, and I really like the director, Gary Chapman, and I got Richard Purdom a job. I didn't get him the job. They were looking for an animation director. I suggested him, and he got the job. And so we became a little team where any of the stuff that was too complex for him to handle on the computer systems, I just helped him with. And so we became really good friends.
That sounds really interesting. And did you? And was there a lot of 2D people at that time who were chastising you, or no? No, not really. How did people respond from the 2D animation community in London when they heard that you were moving into 3D?
I don't know. For starters, some of the people that I used to work with before, like Uli, for example, were already starting to slip into 3D world themselves. So by the time I actually came out the other end on Valiant, he had done a couple of 3D commercials. And the nice thing about it was I could just hop straight on and do a couple for him because I now knew the system. And so there were a lot of people, at least in the commercials field, that made the jump. I mean, a lot of the people that were purely 2D moved away in the great exodus when Amblin packed up in Acton and went over. That was, I don't know, it was somewhere.
The great exodus.
Well, it's just because that was amazing, because Disney suddenly recruited and DreamWorks were doing The Prince of Egypt, and there was a real war of even getting assistance from each other.
Yeah, I heard, who was we talking to recently, and they were saying that like there was like a real, Disney was trying to poach, or DreamWorks were trying to poach Disney artists, and they were getting like crazy amounts of money to go and work on The Prince of Egypt. like kind of I'm work on Wall Street kind of money.
Yeah.
Like really
Be an assistant on
Yeah,
Prince
yeah.
of Egypt.
Yeah.
You must have had to have been pretty good to be an assistant on Prince of Egypt, though, I imagine. Do you think?
Yeah, I mean the thing is that it is quite challenging work, and I mean I guess that there were a lot of good assistants in London because of the amount of commercials that were being made, and the fact that you had to be able to work in almost any style, and hop between studios, and then the experience from Roger Rabbit and The Thief, where of course a lot of people were trained up from being. I mean, like I know people who used to be illustrators. They used to just do illustrations and they now make their money from assisting. And as there's less and less assistants around, and as 2D is sort of up and coming again, like Justine, the lady I did the Pirates with, I mean, she's constantly busy. I mean, I got her to clean up some of my pigeon drawings, but she had to do it over Christmas because there's no other time. So it's, I think...
So you think that it did kind of go down a bit and now it's on the way up again?
I think 2D is on the way up, yeah.
So there was a period where it genuinely was like quite a bit of a wasteland in terms of work. Or...
Yeah, I mean that's why I guess that for a while I didn't do any 2D work at all. So like I mean, pretty much even the bit between Valiant and Despero was a mixture of 2D commercials and the mostly 3D commercials.
Right.
Like there was the Sky campaign and the Domestos stuff. So yeah, a lot of 3D stuff.
Okay, and why do you think that it's had a resurgence? Is that because people are discovering digital 2D stuff? Or?
I guess so. I guess it is looking more
fashion.
interesting these days. The output, because you can just mix things in.
Yeah.
But also I think that because everyone is doing 3D, so you have 3D commercials, you have Blue Sky and Pixar and DreamWorks producing, and Disney producing 3D movies. The market is saturated with it.
Yeah.
And I have the feeling that, people still like drawings. I mean, the reason why I get such a kick out of 2D animation is that it's the only way. In any animation field, you move something around. So you have stop motion animation, you have a puppet and you move the puppet. CG, you have a rig character and you move the rig character. Cutout, you've got a piece of paper, you move the piece of paper. In drawn animation, you throw away drawing one and you do a totally new thing. So it's like there's no molecule from drawing one is in drawing two. And it's the ultimate cheat, and that's why I like it so much. And I think that you can do things that you pretty much can't do in 3D, and I hope people just see that and think, oh, I like the look of that, and go for it.
And that is really interesting. I never really thought of it in that way. But was you not tempted to go over to America and work on any of these kind of projects?
I guess. I mean, I really liked London at the time. Because I just moved to London and I just loved it here, and my girlfriend, of course, from Canada. Had moved to London and we had our house together. I just thought, do I really want to up stumps and go over there? And I mean, I thought that again after I worked on ParaNorman. There was the offer of moving over to Portland, which is more difficult because Portland is a one-horse town. It's if you don't work for Leica, there is no other studio really. And so I always worried that if at some point I've had enough. I don't think I would, because it's a pretty amazing place, but there's nowhere else to go, and then it's just basically coming back again. Whereas in London, there have been times where I've had enough of working for a specific studio on a specific job, and you just go, I'm glad it's over. Like at the end of almost every feature film, I go, fantastic, and now I love a break and just do short format things for a while, so I don't have to worry about this like long format stuff. And then by the time I've done 3 or 4 commercials, I'm happy to go back on a feature film. But you can't do that if there's only one. One show going.
Was you in Portland for ParaNorman?
Yeah, I went over twice for a month each time.
Okay.
I did 2 sequences. I ordered 2 sequences, and the first one I actually did the rough board in Portland, then finished it in London, and then I did the rough board in London and finished in Portland. And then I just did a couple of noodly bits. And
I've really liked that film. I really did like ParaNorman.
Yeah, it's all Chris Butler, who also worked at Richard Purdam's production on the Mr. Bean series. It's his story and it's his idea, and it's just an amazing thing. They took his idea and they just let him run with it. And I think it's a lovely film. Yeah.
Has it done very well?
I don't think it's done as well as other things. I think it would ultimately make its money back.
Okay.
And I think they're just a studio that's still. sort of finding its feet. And what I think is nice to a degree, it's probably also problematic, I don't know, but what's nice is the fact that they are financed from within. Travis's dad has all the money, and that means that they don't have to. You wouldn't believe you go to a distributor and they want to change your film immediately. They don't have to go through that. They make the films they want to make, and hopefully at some point they'll be successful enough so that they can actually make a go of it.
They've made some amazing stuff.
Yeah, and the new one, Box Trolls.
Box Trolls looks amazing.
It's really good. I'm really excited by their kind of like prospect. Have you done anything on Box Trolls?
No, I haven't. But there's this I just bought and read, Anya's Ghost by Vera Brosco. She's a storyboard artist at Leica.
Ah, okay.
And this is almost like a sister piece to ParaNorman, which is it's slightly darker, I think.
Is it
darker? Yeah, it's slightly more going towards the horror movie thing, but it's really very nice.
Is it an O'Brow piece?
I don't know. Anya's Ghost, what's it say on the spine?
It's
01, yeah. And it's a lovely story, and she's one of the board artists there, and they've got a bunch of really good people.
And it has that feel of ParaNorman to it.
This one, it's another ghost story, but they're very similar. It's not the same, or it's not even a related story, but it has the same flavour. Either one of them probably has inspired the other. I don't know.
Right. Yeah. We're gonna have some big podcast notes at the end of this. There's so much interesting stuff that we can go.
You've got an amazing memory, actually. I have to say you can recall a lot of this stuff much quicker than I ever can. I was going to ask you. You don't have a mobile.
No, I don't.
Wow, really?
Why don't you have a mobile?
At the beginning it was that I just didn't care for one, and then the more the world got taken over by mobile technology, the more I started disliking them.
Okay.
And
because there's so much technology you obviously have adopted, but smartphones, or mobile phones generally.
Yeah. I've never really liked telephones. That's the thing. I definitely don't want to be phoned by somebody somewhere out there. But it's just the fact that telephones are very unkind creatures, which basically means if the telephone rang right now, because it only rings about 6 times and then the answer machine kicks in, I would just suddenly run away and answer it. That's unavoidable, but it's not very nice. And if you have a mobile phone, that happens everywhere. And I've been interrupted in the best possible jokes I told. so I lost the punchline due to a stupid mobile phone. But it's just that I've actually figured out that I don't need it at all, which means that I don't think I've ever lost a job or was unavailable for something because I don't have a mobile. People leave messages on an answer machine or email me, and there's once been an occasion where I got on the wrong train down to Tunbridge Wells that wouldn't stop because I didn't make an announcement, and Sharon was waiting for me at London Bridge, and she literally waited for an hour.
Okay.
I mean, all the time for me to go to Tunbridge Wells and back.
Oh, right.
Okay.
But that's the only time ever that I wished I'd had a mobile, and if I had a mobile, I wouldn't have been able to phone her because she doesn't have one. so it's basically it is now happening, however, that I can't get certain services because I don't have a mobile phone. I was trying to sign up for one of those zip cars.
Okay.
I can't have one because they can't ring me while I'm driving. And I kept asking her, "You're not allowed to ring me while I'm driving." And the other thing is that I like renting canal boats. And it looks like the next time I'll have a canal boat, I'll have to give them a contact number. Yeah.
Like drug dealers probably just have it for the trip and then check it out.
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
And also, but you can, like with smartphones now, they have little animation packages and stuff.
Oh, I'm sure. I mean, once the stylus gets better on an iPad, I might even be interested in one of those. Yeah. But I've got a laptop that, we've got one between us, so Sharon's taking it to Canada. But I don't know. I just don't know.
I think it's very. I kind of love that actually. More and more, I'm thinking about. We were talking to Ant Blades about this, about how when you have a smartphone, you don't ever have time for yourself because you always, anytime you have like a moment where you don't have anything to do, you don't stop and think. You just look down your phone and check your emails or look at the news or.
Yeah, and he was saying it was getting in the way of like sketchbooking on the train or something like that. You just end up just flicking through Instagram, and
also just letting his mind wander and thinking about stuff.
Yeah, that's right.
That's definitely a valid point. But when I first moved to London, I didn't have a smartphone. I had a regular mobile phone. It was just, I think it was one of those Nokias where it's like green and like it's got the big text on it and stuff. I was really pleased with it, and it wasn't anything valuable, and I could drop it in the toilet, and I wouldn't have anything to lose. But then I did lose a job because I didn't get back to them quickly enough. I didn't email them back.
Yeah.
And that was a point where I didn't have any money. I really needed the job.
Yeah.
And so next time, next time I had a bit of cash, I bought one.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think it's really inspiring that you cannot have a mobile phone and still be functional.
It works so far.
In this day and age.
The other thing is that the nice thing is it teaches you punctuality, because I don't have an excuse and I can't suddenly ring.
True.
So I'm always trying to be somewhere in time. I'm sure there'll be a point where I have to get a pay-as-you-go one just in order to get a hire car or something like that. Because I don't have a car either. So when we go away on holiday, like we picked one up in Inverness a couple of months ago, and the woman wanted a contact telephone number. We finally gave her the number of the cleaner in the cottage we were staying, and that was fine. But we didn't tell her it was the cleaner's number. We just gave her a number. And of course they don't try to ring you. If you return the car on time, no one bothers. But,
what are you working on at the moment?
Working at Studio AKA.
Oh really? Okay. Yeah. Oh right, is it on the HSBC?
No, it's Steve Small's got a small job going, and I think it's a job for online. It's mostly Flash, but the scene I'm doing at the moment is so involved that we've decided to make it look like Flash, but it's actually exercise like CGI.
Oh really?
So it's very, very flat colours and very, very nice and very funny.
Oh okay, cool.
So that'll be fun, and then it looks like they might have something following on from this one going into March, so I might be there for a couple of months.
Oh, okay. So, you're probably due another feature film, aren't you?
That'd be nice, yeah. I mean, I think there's a couple of things, gossips going around, but I have no idea, if anything's happening. So, but I wouldn't mind another feature.
And you wouldn't mind doing another 3D feature? Or?
No, not at all. I mean, to be frank, it'd be nice to get some more storyboarding work, because Chan storyboarded, I think, 3 or 4 of the Tim Burton features.
Right.
And I very much enjoyed storyboarding, because it's like, I mean, when I was younger and I was into animation being as fluid as possible, that's one of the curses, by the way, of being a classically trained animator, is that Dick Williams always used to say, 2's work but 1's shine. I used to always think that I had to stick everything on 1s, and then at some point I decided that there were so many people doing amazing stuff by just leaving the bits in the middle out and doing things on 2s and 3s and 4s, and the Japanese do it all the time.
Well, I discovered 3s recently. And
yes,
it's amazing.
And so I then basically started to embrace that, and just there's the job, which the graffiti job, for example, is all 3s, and it doesn't really matter because it works perfectly fine. And then of course you quickly find out if you just do a drawing every second or half a second, and you cover a vast amount of time. Basically, you suddenly just like sketching out a minute and a half. How much fun that can be.
Yeah.
So storyboarding, I really enjoyed.
I prefer 2s and 3s, to be honest, to watch. I don't know whether it's just like because I'm an animator and I've spent a lot of time thinking about that kind of thing, and I'm just used to it. But it feels like it's just got a bit more bite to it, a bit more kind of texture. If it's 2s and 3s.
I mean, there's a wonderful thing that we did on. There's a job that AKA did for an almond milk product, and that was CG.
Oh, it's out at the moment, isn't it?
I think so. It's
like a squirrel or something.
No. This is I think it's for America, and I did a test animation for it for the pitch, and I did the test animation in Flash, and it was on singles, but it was all just shapes moving. So it's like it was extremely. Well, it almost looked like it was 3D because I stuck to all the volumes and stuff like that. They decided to do it in 3D because that way changes could be made that you can't really make in Flash, like for example, change the camera angle or whatever. And they kept it on 2s. And the amazing thing about it is that because the steps are bigger, it's much more forgiving. So, for example, I did a couple of walk cycles, which I was happy with, but I wasn't ecstatic about. But I was trying to get sort of a walk cycle out every day, so for background characters, so that at the end of the week I had 5 walk cycles. And then somebody said, "Oh, we're probably going to do it all on 2s." So I went in, set a keyframe on every other frame, and then set XSI to stepped, and it all looked perfect. The little tiny inaccuracies, the bits where the timing didn't quite work, and things weren't quite coming around on a proper arc, like seeing from the side, they all disappeared because the steps were large enough and they were roughly in the right place, and it looked like it was all properly done. So I just thought, it is true, 2s are more forgiving. They give you, they basically, the audience generates the in-betweens in their brain, and those in-betweens are perfect. and yeah, it worked very well. I very much liked it.
I still think that there is something about 2D as opposed to 3D when you animate, that things can be slightly off or slightly wrong. Like with 3D, everything's always a perfect arc.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's something that exists in any 3D package, but I'd like to just have a button which, when you finished animating, you just fuck it up a little bit.
Oh, right.
I think there is something like that, like
button.
where you, because I remember working with Max van der Merwe, and he was telling me about this tutorial or something by a DreamWorks animator, and there's something where like you animate something almost like you would in a symbol in Flash, and then afterwards you can kind of animate that bit of animation, and it messes up some arc stuff which actually happens naturally in life, and that kind of makes it quite realistic. And there was the example was that someone jumping over a box or something, and it was like really beautiful, but it was because I think they messed up some of the arcs a bit afterwards.
Yeah.
So it definitely makes sense. I know you can get it with modelling. You can just like break it and make everything like slightly messy. There was one other question I had, which was, so for somebody who's been able to survey 24 years of animation in London, have you noticed a difference in the character or the quality of people coming into the industry then as opposed to now?
Yes. Oh yeah. I mean, when I first started, there were so few people doing animation. For starters, because there was so much work involved, that a lot of the people that you found were people that had totally different jobs. So they were sort of, unpaid artists or musicians or whatever, and on the side they would animate or assist. So anything below the animation level, the animators level at Dick Williams, there were all people that had all sorts of interests. There was a wild mix of people.
Right.
And none of them were particularly serious about the subject. They were doing what they were doing well, but they had other interests, but this was a way to make money. Animation has become a lot more serious.
A lot more professionalised.
Absolutely. And the young people you bump into, I mean, my jaw fell to the floor when I started working on Despero, and most of the kids were from Gobelins.
Yeah.
There was one guy from Super Infocom, there was an experienced Italian animator, and one Spanish guy, but the quality of the animation...
Valentin Amador Diaz, was he?
He wasn't working for me, but I know him. The guy called Barth, lovely Joanna,
Barth, was it?
Joanna Bacher?
Bart, was he from the Gobelin?
Yes, yeah. He was amazing.
Wicked,
he just raced through footage. So I had a team of people that, they frightened me, honestly. They were absolutely amazing. And they were dead serious and dead committed and delivered on time. So it's become a very, very professional industry.
And do you think that translates to people being too serious, like outside of work as well? Do you think people have less fun?
I don't know. I mean, we might have had a little bit too much fun. There was a hell of a lot of drinking going on at the time.
Which certainly thought so.
Yeah. I mean, I think that I actually like what's happened to animation. The stuff that's coming out now, because I'm on juries all the time, like either for Bar, I once was on a BAFTA jury and stuff. Every year the quality of the output goes up.
Really?
Because there's always another player. I mean, now it's animation workshop in Denmark. They are producing amazing looking stuff. There's you guys, but the quality just goes up. People do things where I no longer go, that's very nicely done, I could do something like this if I tried really hard. They do things where I go, this is so amazing, it just blows me away. And it happens all the time now.
That's
and
great.
I mean, the last jury, for the Bar pre-selection jury, where you have to watch.
That's the British Animation Awards.
Yeah, and I think it's just pre-selection, so you literally just you get given everything that has a hope. So there was something like 40 or 50 films.
Wow.
And it's the typical thing. You have sort of stretches where there's a dearth of quality, but most of it, I was just amazed. I was amazed that, like, really, really, really sophisticated stuff, and very mature stuff, like where you have stuff that that's no longer trying to shine on just one level, like, oh, look how well I can animate, but the whole thing is a rounded something that works. So,
That's great. So do you get a bunch of DVDs and then you sit on your sofa at home and just watch?
Yeah, I think we got half the DVDs we got given here and watched, and then we reviewed those, and then we watched the other half in the studio together. So I think we had about 30 or so to start with.
And how does it work? Do you watch all of every single film?
Yeah, we watched all the films, and then in this case it was a jury of 4, or pre-selection jury of 4, and then you basically just discuss them, and you give them a yes, no, or maybe, and then all the yeses and maybes then get discussed further. And there's some people who will always really like one film that the others don't get. Yeah. And you have to nail it down to about a 2-hour program, because that program will then be shown to the judges.
Yeah.
So at an average of between 5 and 10 minutes, I guess you end up with about 20-25 films that make it into the final selection. Maybe it's just 15 films, depending on the length. Because anything longer really just can't be digested. And then they have to nail it, like boil it down to, I think, 3, of which one is the winner. And yeah, so pre-selection is fun because you get to see a lot of stuff. It's also... you have a hangover afterwards. I mean, because your brain, it's not just the fact that you have to watch so many things. You have to try and remember them. You have to try and find something interesting in them. And you have to try to give people a chance that have done something neat that isn't quite there yet, versus people who have just totally nailed it, because it's comparing oranges and apples. I mean, some of the short films are done by teams of 20 or 30 people in a college where an entire team gets thrown at it, and others are done by one person. And you gotta be fair.
Yeah, so it's I mean, it's like looking from the outside in. We released a film in March that's been doing the festival rounds. It's my first experience of submitting anything to a festival, and it's to me it seems like such a murky world. Like, I don't understand who these people are who are selected. It fills me with hope that somebody like you is on the panel. But you send these DVDs away, and then 4 months later you get an email back saying you're in or you're not in. And in between, I have no idea what happens. Who are these people? Like, why do I care what they think about my films? How do you get selected for that? Because you were in the BAFTA jury as well, did you say?
Yeah, I mean, the BAFTA jury came about because I'm a friend of Tony Collingwood's, and he's got his own studio, Collingwood, and he was just basically putting a team together, and because we'd spent a couple of Christmases together for big Christmas dinners, there's a bunch of guys who meet up every Christmas, he just said, would I be interested? And that was fun. That was basically just locked in a room for a whole afternoon with a proper projection. And then, talk it through and discuss it.
Okay, and, so there's like a big conversation that happens, and certain people are, I assume, championing certain films.
Yes, I mean, I was definitely championing one film, which was totally independent, like your film, basically, independently done by 2 guys. It was another one of those years where there was a big Aardman film going in, and I just wanted at least for that little film to have a chance, because I thought it was very funny and very nice, and you just discuss it, you just talk about it, and if everybody disagrees, you won't get it in, and if some people see what you're trying to say, you will get it in. But it's interesting, it's fun, and it was just a laugh, basically.
And do you think that it's still a relevant way of judging and promoting films, like in this day and age with Vimeo and YouTube?
There's certain things I've never quite got. I mean, the short category at the Academy in the States, like the Oscars, that's something that is so political by now that if there's another Disney short out, it even says so on Cartoon Brew, it will get in. I mean, not that it will win, but it will at least get in. It's also what do you judge? Like in the BAFTA jury, it was filmic excellence. So that can be the way a film is put together and animated. So that's the craft in everything, in the models, in the design and stuff. Or do you award a prize to something that's really inventive and really neat? Well, it is the Film and Television Academy. It's the craft behind it, which is why both the BAFTAs and the Oscars have all these things like sound and editing, all the technical bits. That's a really difficult thing. A lot of the festivals award ideas. They basically say, is this a neat piece of work? Like Annecy and Bradford. And I think that's better. I think ultimately you're not judging a film by the craft of how it's put together, but is it a neat film? And if it's crafty and well put together, fantastic. But I like the concept of some of them. I don't like the concept of all of them.
Right.
But
it's amazing to me. We were looking at it the other day. The first video went up on YouTube about 9 years ago. The first ever video.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
YouTube has only been around for 9 years. And Vimeo almost exactly the same. Maybe a year later.
Yeah.
And that to me blows my mind. But it also somehow explains how. I mean, I've been feeling like over the last year that film festivals feel kind of like important in a way that I think it's good for people to congregate in one area, especially animators, to get out and meet people and be forced to sit down in a dark room and watch a film the whole way through. But the power that they have in promoting people and making or breaking people's careers, I felt to be slightly questionable in light of this explosion of films online. But yeah, knowing that that's only such a recent development kind of shows why those things I think are still so prevalent and important.
Mm-hmm. I think it really boils down to like what is the reason for you making your film? Like, do you want?
It has to be judged on its own terms.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think like if it's just about making something to show people, then there's no festival in the world that can compete with the audience you'll get online. You know, like and I think that's it. I think it's really what you want to get out of making something.
Yeah, and the other thing is that the festivals are slightly self-serving because, of course, most of the people that go there are people who are interested in animation.
Yeah.
So most of the people that go there are animators. So you got, that's why all the screenings are totally packed in Annecy. Whereas online, I think you do reach people who have no interest in animation, but when they suddenly receive an email saying, "I found something funny," and there is a short film that really tickles your fancy, and that everybody can. I mean, my sister keeps showing me things on her smartphone of like a little animation of a pig trying to get a cookie off the top of a fridge. Very nice film, nothing particularly inventive, but something that really tickled her fancy.
Yeah.
And that she showed me. So
I think Obama's Elf would probably never win a BAFTA, but
no, it's too short.
But it's great, you know. And like I think
it's definitely
it's amazing.
It's got a different place in culture, doesn't it?
Yeah. And I think that's the kind of.
The other thing is that willing to make it throwaway, I think, is quite nice.
Yeah.
The fact that it took 3 hours to do, and I don't care if anyone likes it. I really don't. Yeah. And so if somebody does like it, it's a wonderful surprise, but it's not as if I was risking a disappointment. So it's a total throwaway thing. And if I have another idea, I'll do another throwaway thing. It's
So it's not something that you think like I'm going to make sure I'm going to be producing this stuff. It's just I have an idea, I'm just going to make it and throw it out there. Yeah.
I mean, the thing is that maybe I should be more focused. I mean, at the moment there's still enough work for me, so I've got stuff to do during the day, and if I have an idea in the evening, I just noodle around until I find it's working, and then I stick it online.
But it's funny.
It sounds like a nice place to be honest.
No, absolutely. But then we've met with at least one animator who then has turned that into a career for himself, and. I know someone who went to school with a guy, and he's would make these little throwaway animation things, and he was hated by his teachers on his course because he wasn't making the kind of things they thought he should be. But he's made a career online because he's sort of noticed that these things do go viral or whatever and get millions of hits, and that's a way of generating revenue through advertising, but then also like putting him to the forefront of big clients who would then want him to produce content for him directly. Is that something you've thought about exploring?
Yeah, I mean, Simon Tofield did it, of course.
Yeah, exactly.
Simon's Cats, and that did not just become a sort of an internet phenomenon, but it's a proper industry.
Yeah.
I was thinking. I mean, like I had an idea, and I don't know. I did this little bit of animation, and it's actually I have it. It's Stephen Hawking sitting in his chair, and he just blinks, looks left and right, and his finger does this on the little button, and the intensity of the screen changes. That's all there is to it. Because every Mac has the voice generator that can talk like this about the universe. And I just thought if I have a really good writer that can write, inane monologue that because of course everything Stephen Hawking says is profound, but not everything he thinks can possibly be profound.
No,
there must be the odd just mad thought in there as well. And to just write these little interior monologues and then literally just have the same image with a flickering screen play, and so no animation needs to be done, just needs to be edited. A little bit like Some Grey Bloke, which I find very funny, and I don't know how much of an industry it is, but I never found somebody who could consistently come up with good enough material. Maybe I should start writing it myself, but I haven't started yet. But yes, I like the idea of finding. I mean, do you know Sydney Padua? Because she's done it. She was working on Despero, and she showed me one day this thing that she wanted to do, which is a fairy detective in London in Victorian times that solves fairy crime. Her drawings are spectacularly good. She's an amazing draftswoman. I found the concept a little bit weird, but then knowing that Sir Arthur Conan Doyle was into fairies or thought they existed, there might have been something behind it. And then at some anniversary about Ada Lovelace and Charles Babbage, she did an illustration of Babbage and Lovelace, which then turned into an online comic called 2D Goggles, which is, do you know Babbage? Babbage is the inventor of the difference engine, sort of a steampunk Victorian inventor of a massive mechanical computer. And Ada Lovelace is the first programmer, basically. She wrote code on cards that would operate the difference engine. And he made the two into a crime-fighting duo. She made the two into the... And so Ada Lovelace is smoking a pipe, and Babbage hates street musicians, all of which is true. But it's become such a hit online that she's been given money by, I think, Jonathan Cape Publishing to make it into a book. Wow. And so she found her following online. And the stuff is truly brilliant. I mean, it's really quite bizarre. And there's enough people interested in her stuff that it's already a surefire bet that the book will sell. And I don't know when she's going to bring it out, but I think that's a fantastic way to go.
Yeah, there's that guy who, was it called Dinosaurs or something? And he drew this panel...
Dinosaur Comics.
Yeah, he drew...
Is that what it's called? Dinosaur?
I think so.
Something like that, yeah.
He drew like a panel of, or had these images of these comics like 10 years ago, and he was...
It's 3 panels, basically, and it's always the same every single time.
And every day he writes a new bit of dialogue for them to say, and he's been doing it every day for something like 10 years.
So it's the same drawings?
Same drawings.
Exactly
like what you're talking about with the Stephen Hawking.
Yeah.
And I think there's a really good interview with him. There's a good podcast called Make It Then Tell Everybody, and he gets interviewed on that. And it's quite interesting, and listen to it, and he talks about how he's kind of explored making an industry out of that and selling merchandise, and then I think he now writes Adventure Time, the comics.
Oh right, yes.
Exactly like you were talking about with this other book. I think it's something you should definitely explore.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't mind doing it. I'm really tempted to do a graphic novel at some point, because you can do it all yourself. You can you sit there and you work on it, and you can get out exactly what you want to get out. And I've read some amazing ones recently. There's a book called Hair Shirt.
Oh yeah, I really love that.
I love everything about that book. And I don't know that I think he's Belgian, Manu Larsene, a guy who did Ordinary Victories, and that just blew me away.
Oh, I have seen that. Yeah.
Stories.
Super simple drawings.
Yeah, little sort of bubbly noses and stuff, and it just looks like it's just a funny, silly comic of a guy who smokes too much dope. But it's one of the most profound books I've ever read. I mean, just astonishing. I mean, and unfortunately out of print. I've tried to get because I've given away so many copies that I can't. I'll give you my copy, but I can't. I need to, keep hold of the last one. But it's amazing stuff.
Yeah, it is great when you find a comic that other people haven't read. Especially, I get it with European comics quite a lot. They just haven't really been released over here. And there's a period when none of them were even translated or published over here. But yeah, when you find something like that, it's still such a gem, because quite a lot of the time it's not available online or anything, and you really have to go and still dig it out and get it.
There's one I really want to read called George Clooney's, and it's mental. It's done by I think he's an animator, or he works in animation, but he started doing these comics, and it's the writing is like, I think, French kind of slang from the 90s, so it just cannot be translated.
All right.
It just doesn't make sense, and it's only kind of funny if you know that kind of slang.
Yeah.
And I met him at Annecy, and I was like, because I loved the drawings, and I was gonna buy the book, but then I was hoping that maybe they were it'd get an English translation or whatever. And then I spoke to him, and just before I left, and he was like, I just don't think it's possible. And I was like, I should have bought a copy.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think
that's probably a good point to wrap it up. Yeah, thanks so much for talking to us.
Well, thanks for talking to me.
thanks very
It
much.
was absolutely fascinating.
Yeah. Cool.
All right, goodbye.
Bye everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Yeah.